We like to start every morning with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nani nani are they talking about and why. Why should we care? Why are they talking about it? What does it mean? What's it going to do for me today? Because I don't have a whole lot of time. And I know for you guys, you don't have a whole lot of time, because if we're going to do that work to be able to help and support our individuals who are on the spectrum, time is of the essence. Chop, chop, right? So, but we can't just completely ignore the jargon, right? Because those experts just keep on using it. And eventually we kind of turn to the dark side and go, oh, it's important, isn't it? So what we try to do here is give you a jargon term, then we give you the actual definition, and then we give you a working definition so that you can see what does it mean and what does it have to do with me and why should I care. Today's jargon term is one that we've never used before. This is a brand spanking new one. And why? I don't know about you, but I had never heard of this before, but it's pretty stinking important. So here we go. CRPD. What? Is this like some new form of, doing CPR? What are we talking about? So let's take a look at what our actual definition is. CRPD stands for the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And I don't know about you, I heard about this and I was like, oh, is there a convention? This is a place that we're going to go? Is it in Atlanta at the convention center? Is it, and they're going to have booths and a resource fair? My friends, that is not what it is. So let's take a look at what our working definition is. It's an international treaty. It's called a convention, but it's not something you go and visit. It's a treaty. It's a document that protects the rights of individuals with disabilities. I did not know about this. Did you know that there was an international treaty and that many countries have signed this saying that they will abide by? Because, every country has its different laws. We talk a lot about, because we're here in the United States, we talk about ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. We talk about IDEA and what that means in our schools. We talk about all of that. But I know so many of you are watching that are not in the United States. And we've got a topic that's coming up a little bit later on in the show that we're going to discuss in just a minute that isn't happening in the United States, but we care passionately about it here in the United States because our disability community and our autism community, it doesn't have boundaries. It's not partisan. It's not even, it's not one religion, it's not one color, it's not one ethnicity. It is the most diverse group of people on the planet. And then beyond that, the larger disability community. And my understanding is that this is 5% of the population. That's the largest minority on the planet. So, important to know, and I didn't know, there's an international treaty and that countries have signed up for it. Let me tell you what the main issues, because this is a very long document, but let me distill it down for you. What the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities is trying to do. It's trying to prevent individuals with disability from a failure to receive an education. It's trying to stop people from preventing them to get jobs even when they are well qualified. It's trying to stop people from preventing them access for information. It's trying to stop people from preventing people with disabilities from obtaining proper health care. It's trying to stop internationally people from preventing them from being mobile and getting around. And it is trying to stop people, prevent them from causing individuals with disabilities from fitting in or being accepted. We want to stop that prevention of those things happening. And many countries have signed the CRPD, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Amongst those countries, notably the United States and South Africa. And we're going to be talking about a company in South Africa that I think, is preventing individuals with disabilities on a couple of these different fronts. So we've got a great guest who's going to be joining us with that. But isn't it great to know, by the way, this was ratified by the United Nations. It is on file. You can go and look at it. It takes a bunch of other considerations, and we can talk more about this, but this was signed into being, I think it was first introduced, on December 6, 2006, and there are countries that have been joining since that period of time. A pretty important thing to know about. So that's the CRPD, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Good to know, right? Okay, moving on. We always have a question of the day for you, and our question today, and we hope that you guys will be writing in on Facebook and giving your answer to it. Our question is, should amusement parks be able to prohibit people with disabilities from riding their attractions? Because this is exactly what we're going to be talking about in the second hour today. We've got a fabulous guest who's going to be with us. I'm going to talk about that more in a minute, but I want to know from you guys, what's your feeling about this? If you saved and saved and saved to go to an amusement park, any amusement park, anywhere in the world, and you had your child with you, and look, there are more disabilities than just autism, right? But let's talk specifically about autism. Is there something having to do with autism that would give a blanket saying that no children could, let's take an example of the Peter Pan ride at Disneyland. Can you imagine a world in which Disney would go, we're not going to let anyone with autism, no one with autism. We know autism is a big, huge spectrum that includes people like Dr. Temple Grandin. She just can't ride the Peter Pan ride. Can you imagine that? And can you imagine being okay with that? I can't imagine that. But there is an amusement park in South Africa that has on their policy that individuals with disabilities are not allowed to ride the rides. None of them, any of the rides. There's not a single ride in their park, and there's not a single disability that they will excuse. So if you are hearing impaired, you can't ride the ride, any of the rides. If you have a visual impairment, sorry, you can't ride the ride. If you have autism, like the list goes on, right? How many various different disabilities, and it doesn't matter the extent of the impairment, individuals with disabilities. And by the way, when you ask them, and we have asked them, and I'll read to you from their response, they say, oh no, this is the international standard. We can only uphold what the international standard is. What? What? I beg your pardon. I live in Southern California. I have an annual pass to a place called Disneyland. If you're going to ask for an international standard on what amusement parks can and cannot do, I'm going to guess that you would consult Disney. Disney does not have that policy. Disney couldn't have that policy. So we're going to dig in on this a little bit because they are, I believe, discriminating, and that they are in violation of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And as I said yesterday, take a couple of autism moms and we're going to school you on what you can and cannot do. But the UN says you can't. I'm going to get hepped up today. The top of my head's going to fly off and fly around the room, isn't it? All right. So we have a topic for the week. And guess what our topic for the week is? Yes, in big letters, discrimination. Because isn't this important to all of us? I watched a video this morning of a little girl standing in a church in Charlotte, North Carolina, and crying and saying, I feel like I'm being treated differently because of the color of my skin. And I gotta tell you, sucked the heart right out of my body. Because I wanna run to that little girl and say, I'm sorry, and not everybody feels that way, and this is not right, and you are right, this is wrong. And yell at a bunch of people and say, we gotta get together on this because we cannot continue in the way that we're continuing on, right? And I know those of us who have children who are on the autism spectrum have felt the sting of discrimination. There is no circumstance in which discrimination is okay. It just isn't. And it is important that we're going to be talking about bullying a little bit in a couple of minutes. And one of the things that we know with bullying is that when someone is being bullied, it is important for that person to have a stance that's clear and to say that it's not okay, but that isn't the thing that's important. The thing that is important is all the people standing around and watching. That if they don't stand up and say it is not right what you're doing to that person, then the bully continues. It is incumbent upon all of us to stand up when we see injustices and say, that's not right and not on my watch. That doesn't fly. That, I personally want to write a letter to that little girl and say, this is not okay with me. This is not okay with me. And I think that we all need to mobilize whenever we see discrimination, to stand up and be in solidarity with the person who is being bullied or being discriminated against. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to stand up, and we're going to ask you to stand up and say, no, this is not okay. And that's, by the way, and that really is what we know from science is what works, is to verbally say, that's not okay. I'm not okay with that. That's where it all starts and ends. And people can talk about other things, but that's all I'm asking you to do, is to stand up and say, that's not okay. I'm not okay with that.